Good morning. Uh, the next is a plenary lecture by Professor P.L. Aryananda on compromising patient safety, lessons I learned from critical incidents. I'll be chairing. I'm Dr. Sarath Gamdisilla along with Dr. Kishar Gunratna. I'm really happy and proud to chair this session because I have been working with Professor P.L. Aryananda as his co-senior house officer and as senior lecturers in the same unit for so many years. So, Professor P.L. Aryananda, please.
Good morning, everybody. I would first of all like to thank the President and the Council of Ceylon College of Physicians for inviting me to give this talk. During my talk, I will discuss as to how critical incidents will be important from clinicians' perspective and how reflective learning can help clinicians to sharpen their clinical reasoning skills. And finally, go through 4 case scenarios giving reflective accounts on some of the failures I had experienced as a clinician. What is the importance of critical incidents to clinicians? Well, it's a part of the clinical experience. These are travails and challenges of being a doctor. These incidents are disturbing, and clinicians should self-reflect on these incidents and go further to share these experiences with colleagues to keep them on guard. Critical incidents are clinical events that are of clinical educational value, influencing personal and professional development of doctors. And therefore, I will be sharing some of my bad experiences as a clinician to invoke and encourage a habit of self-reflection among young physicians in this audience with regards to failures they may have endured when delivering clinical care. Reflection is a metacognitive process that is thinking about one's own thinking. It can also be defined as those intellectual and affective activities in which individuals engage to explore their experiences in order to lead to a new understanding and appreciation. Reflective learning process can be illustrated by Kolb's experiential learning model or cycle, which is given in the next slide. This is Kolb's experiential learning cycle. New levels of understanding can be achieved by having an experience, then thinking about strengths and weaknesses, thereby learning from the experience, paving way to perform better the next time. As each repetitive cycle takes the performer to a higher level of performance every time, the repetitive cycles can be considered to be an upward spiral, taking the performer from a novice to an expert. I will discuss some aspects of critical incidents using 4 case scenarios that I have experienced. These include lapses in history taking, lack of completeness of physical examination, premature closure in making a diagnosis, and inadequacies in treatment. This case is about lapse in history taking. This incident occurred in 1974 when I was a post-intern doctor in Kegalle Hospital, which then was a base hospital. A 20-year-old unmarried woman was admitted to the medical ward with a rash on the face. Prior to that, she has been in hospital several times for the same complaint. She mentioned that the rash regularly erupts on the face during menstruation and that doctors have failed to give a reason for the rash. What is the diagnosis? Is it SLE? Is it endometriosis? A rash looked like this. I could not make a diagnosis. On the following day, during the ward round, on further history taking, my consultant physician found out that she gets the rash only on certain areas of the face. On further inquiry, she said she has severe dysmenorrhea, which is relieved by paracetamol, and that the facial rash erupts with subsidence of her menstrual flow. What is the diagnosis now? Well, his conclusion was it is a fixed drug eruption due to paracetamol allergy. This case illustrates that the diagnosis can be easily missed if attention is not paid to detail during history taking. It is important to probe into details contextually with an aim of arriving at a diagnosis. Doctors rarely have patience to listen to the whole story, and they often interrupt the patient within a minute. We need to remember that if we are not good listeners, it will be hard for us to become good doctors. Can we take shortcuts during physical examination? I saw this teenage girl in 1980 as a medical registrar in Newcastle, England. She had several hospital admissions for recurrent bouts of hematemesis. On examination, I saw some fresh blood in her mouth. She did not give a history suggestive of peptic ulcer or a history of taking alcohol or NSAIDs. She looked well, and she did not seem to be too concerned. Physical examination and several upper GI endoscopies were normal. We were unable to arrive at a diagnosis. When you are faced with a diagnostic dilemma, it is good to take a step back and revisit basics. We need to remember that blood that is coughed up or blood that drips down from the nasopharynx due to nasal or nasopharyngeal pathology can masquerade as hematemesis. She was not a smoker, and she did not give a history of cough, and her chest radiograph was normal, effectively ruling out any lung pathology. Despite negative findings, she was treated with cimetidine, which is a H2 receptor blocker, which was the drug of choice for peptic ulceration 40 years ago. As we could not arrive at a diagnosis, patient was referred to the ENT surgeon, who wrote back to us saying, there are multiple bite marks on inner aspects of both cheeks. Nasal cavity, pharynx, and larynx are normal. What is the diagnosis? The diagnosis is Munchausen's syndrome. She had faked hematemesis by biting the buccal aspects of her cheeks and manipulated all her doctors. In a situation like this, lateral thinking, that is thinking outside the box, can be useful. Lateral thinking, as opposed to tunnel vision, is a good skill to be developed by clinicians. When in doubt, always question yourself as to whether you are correct. Often, rather than revising the diagnosis and admitting that the conclusion is wrong, the tendency is to show that we are always correct. And we start looking for evidence to justify our foregone wrong conclusion. This should be avoided. Pattern recognition and hypothetico-deductive approach are two ways in which one can arrive at a diagnosis. Is one better than the other? This patient was admitted as an emergency to the medical ward of Teaching Hospital Karapitiya, Galle, in 1997. As a physician on call, I was asked to see this young man who looked very ill, and we learned that he had been in good health before he fell from a coconut tree 3 days ago. During the fall, he had sustained few bruises in his chest, but had not lost consciousness or sustain any head injuries. As he had chest pain, he visited a doctor in his village soon after the fall, and he was reassured and sent home on painkillers. He was tachycardic, tachypneic, hypotensive with very high fever. Breath sounds were absent, and the percussion note was stony dull on the left side. Chest radiograph taken at the time of admission showed features suggestive of a left-sided hydropneumothorax. As the patient was extremely breathless, we swiftly inserted an intercostal drainage tube to relieve hydropneumothorax and evacuated few hundred milliliters of turbid feed fluid with fine particulate matter. Our surgical colleagues who were consulted wanted the patient to be sent to the operating theatre for immediate surgery for treatment of a condition we had missed. What is the misdiagnosis? Surgeon suspected a traumatic diaphragmatic hernia on the left side, resulting herniation of the stomach and intestine into the thorax with subsequent strangulation and perforation. As there was extensive intestinal gangrene, which had resulted in septic shock, patient succumbed in the operating theatre. The main reason for missing the diagnosis was our lackadaisical approach of just holding the radiograph against ambient light and reading it. The other reason for missing the diagnosis was framing of our thoughts to fit a preconceived diagnosis. This is called cognitive bias and confirmation bias, leading to a goal-directed behavior. We misguided ourselves with an overriding tendency to diagnose a medical condition, disregarding the history of trauma as the patient was seen in a medical ward with high fever, dyspnea, and signs of fluid in the chest. What do you see in this picture? A vase or two faces? As a clinician gains experience, he or she tends to rely more and more on pattern recognition to arrive at the diagnosis. I think that's another reason for missing the diagnosis in this patient. At times, even experienced clinicians may have to resort to hypothetical deductive approach in clinical reasoning. Do our patients always listen well and understand all what we say? My last patient is a middle-aged woman with bronchial asthma I saw around mid-1990s as a physician in my outpatient clinic. As she had to take a metered dose inhaler several times at night, I started her on a regular steroid MDI and reviewed her in 2 weeks. During the review visit, as her asthma was not under control, I wanted first to check her compliance before escalating her treatment regime and ask her to demonstrate the inhalation technique. She triggered the MDI without taking the cap off. Then I told her to trigger it after taking the cap off, but she could not do it. When I tried to take off the cap, I had to struggle as the cap was stuck to the MDI with the spray that had collected and condensed from within, with no medication being delivered to her at all. As you realize, the patient has not received any benefit from the steroid MDI that was given to her 2 weeks previously. Who should be blamed for this error? Doctor, pharmacist, or patient? Of course, I'm ready to take the full blame. Often doctors scribble medications on the prescription pad and give it to the patient and tell, take these medicines. In Sinhala, may betika bonna. This practice is incorrect and it demonstrates a huge gap in communication. So what should be the better practice? Explain what you are treating the patient for. Mention how long, how often medications need to be taken and how it should be taken. Find out about drug allergies and avoid offending drugs. In case an allergy develops, tell that all medications should be stopped and a doctor should be seen as soon as possible. Check whether the patient is already on any other medication, including over-the-counter medications and traditional medicines. Wrap up by checking whether the patient understood and whether he or she needs any clarification. Tell when to come back. In special situations, like when prescribing inhalers, demonstrate how devices should be used, if necessary, with the help of pharmacists. As clinicians, we should strive for zero error. But we human beings are imperfect and often have room for improvement in the way we act and react. In your clinical practice, irrespective of whether you experience critical incidents or not, it is better to reflect how you could have treated each patient you have seen better and make your practice more reflective rather than thinking in a stereotyped manner. Here are my references. Since I retired from University of Ruhuna nearly 8 years ago, I have been working in Malaysia. Here is our clinical campus, and here is our teaching hospital. I would like to conclude by quoting Sir William Osler. The value of experience is not in seeing much, but in seeing wisely. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that thought-provoking talk. And I would I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Ceylon College of Physicians to thank Professor P.L. Aryananda for that excellent talk. This concludes this session, this plenary session. Thank you.